I've heard people say that my car is me. You know, when they see it, when they drive in it, they're like, man, this car is you. It's so obvious. And it wasn't my intent, but it's neat to hear from people, even strangers, that, you know, you built this car, it's so obvious. I'm a composite of all my experience. And so that car isn't just me. It's all the people I've interacted with to get to this place. When I bought the car, I was 23 years old. I didn't know all the answers. Today, when I don't know the answers, I go to someone who might have the answers, or I do the research necessary to acquire that knowledge. My car is the result of all those little journeys here and there, across the country, across the world, across telephone lines, at racetracks and car meets, looking at other people's cars, looking at other builders and seeing what they do, if they're willing to share. And it's amazing how accelerated things can be when there is that sharing of knowledge. I imagine it was probably somewhere around 1967. My cousin Denise had a fabulous '68 Volkswagen. It satisfied all of my requirements as far as sound, the smell, the details inside the car. It just all made sense to me, even as a very young child. The funny part is, you know, you can't really even see out the window. Your space is defined by what is visible and what you can touch. Where we grew up in Southgate, every intersection on either side, there's a dip. On purpose, she would, you know, zoom over those dips going 40 miles an hour. So we're getting air and I'm coming out of the seat. I would have brief vistas of the surrounding community and then back behind the dash again. Whoa, and we're laughing, having a great time. That memory sticks with me so much. I left home when I was 16. I had a job, I continued to go to school, and I had a 1959 sunroof Volkswagen. But I was working, I was actually making pretty good money. I went to a consignment lot in Northridge to look at a 911, and it was a pile. I was ready to leave, and this little white '68 912 was sitting under a tree, doing its thing. And I walked over and I said, you know what? I get this car. I wasn't a Porsche expert, but the car looked reasonable, and it was within my price range and left me about 600 bucks to play with. That began the journey that's led me to this moment 30 years later. Immediately realized that the motor was capable of more. Instead of letting pride get in the way, I let creativity take the reins. I grabbed onto people that knew what they were doing. I got advice. I began making suspension changes in the form of shocks, struts, sway bars, tires. That's the low-hanging fruit. Engine and transmission, knowing what I knew from building Type 1s and Chevy engines and building things that revved well beyond their capabilities, I wanted to do that to a 912. I remember the toolbox was full, but the parts box was kind of empty. I had to go to machine shops and I would sketch out a part. This is what I want. And so the first motors that I built, they didn't have Krillo rods. They didn't have a scat crank. They had a crank I made and rods I had made. And they had all these things that I made that were light and strong. As my knowledge of things Porsche grew, I combined them with my hot rod background, my racer background, to make improvements. And my good friend, who was probably my ultimate mentor, I remember finally getting his validation in the form of a look, a grin, and a nod, and the statement that this is the fastest 912 I've ever been in. My car, because it was the only car I had, was my daily driver, and at the same time, it was my weekend race car. So I had to make modifications that worked for both. The car has front and rear sway bars, adjustable shocks, SC brakes, modified master cylinder, a strut brace, a very high-revving twin-spark 1.7-liter fuel-injected 616 motor, a 901 trans, but the gears have been staggered in a way that makes sense for me as a driver. The shifter has been modified, the shift linkage has been modified, the rotors are cross-drilled, ventilated, the instruments have been modified in a way that I get the feedback I need when I need it. But it's an expression of me, everything I know, put into a car. As a young man, I worked in factories, ended up becoming an equipment technician, studied hydraulics, pneumatics, electrical. All of my endeavors, all of my energy and spirit, I poured into machines, and after being terminated, giving that much of yourself, it just had an effect on me. But I always had my Porsche, which I was racing, and I was building things for other people, and that gave me the satisfaction and the connection with people that I was desiring. They want this, and I pour myself into it, and I give it to them, and they're like, oh my God, this is great. I had a little tiny shop over in Southgate. It wasn't much, but it was a place I could go build cars, do race prep. I decided to build something that would represent my idea of what a car shop should be, and a way to interact with people and have a good time while making a living. Once you become a businessman, you're at the mercy of a lot of factors. I was at the old shop in La Habra one day, and it had been a really, really tough couple of years. The complex where I was at was populated with a lot of car people. The bank collapse of late '08 really had a drastic effect. And at the end of the day, there were two men standing out of that complex. And it was me and John Coffey. John had Beta Motorsports right across from me, and he was a SCCA tech, knew suspension inside and out, was a Z expert. In the Z community, he had God powers, you know. And he was the ultimate troll, because he was a troll that actually knew what he was doing. So he would go just obliterate people on the boards, and he took great pleasure in doing it. Epiphany that I had was that I knew a lot of really skilled guys. Some of them aren't even mechanics, but they do stuff. Like one guy makes my t-shirts. I'm thinking to myself, you know, if I bring all these guys together, we all benefit. So it happened. I decided to go big or go home. I had to sacrifice a few things, and I have some customers that were very, very giving to me. One in particular, you know, I had this idea. He laid it on the line. He says, I'm right behind you, man. Let's make this happen. When a car leaves here, what makes it different is that it's really dialed in. Everything's true. The wheels are true. The suspension settings are correct for the purpose of the car. Elements of the car are all aligned, and the hope is that it feels like a car with poise, and it's delivering what Porsche intended, which was a really, really supreme driving experience. Whether it's a race car, street car, Porsche is significant in the build, so we don't go too far outside those boundaries. So back when Porsche built a car, had a responsibility to the family to actually make something that yielded a profit. They got it close enough. You know, they had fitment gauges, they painted it a certain way, and they tested, and you know, the thing went around the court. Okay, it's good, let's put it on the truck, it's out of here. A new Porsche back in the day had kind of a duller shine, maybe an orange peel exterior, and maybe when you looked underneath, undercoating has huge runs on the side you don't see, because they did what they had to do to present a car that was compelling enough to lay down $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 at a time when that was a lot of money. We're building, to the request of a customer, their dream. We're taking a car that's been on the road 40, 50 years, undoing all the things that have been done to it, all the collisions, all the mechanics that didn't have the right size wrench. We're undoing all that. So over the years, now that I'm older, I look back, I'm like, wow, how did I build that many cars? I've been lucky and blessed with the ability to make things a certain way, specifically on air-cooled Porsches. But John Coffey, he has this wealth of knowledge. There was an opportunity to work on this Peking to Paris car, and I could see in his eyes. So on occasion, you'll see other than Porsches in the shop, and the criteria are, is it a fun build? Is it a significant build? Is it something that's going to leave a mark? Peking to Paris Rally Z, absolutely going to leave a mark. And John pretty much just like took over outside Bay 2. That thing went to pieces. He reinforced the chassis, all the major work, all the major installations. We helped when we were asked to help. Unfortunately, we lost John. The last thing he ever worked on, was that car. It was this opportunity to participate in something that's really, really cool. And John just hit a home run. It's just so fun to drive, and it just turns heads everywhere you go. I believe that wherever that car goes in the future, it's actually his legacy. Everything that John was is in that car. As an individual, I'm a composite of many people that I met during my journey to this point. And early on, I always migrated towards those who had knowledge, and I was respectful of that knowledge. To me, it's very important to volunteer the information. I am here for a short while. I'm trying to make a world that makes sense to me, that I enjoy living in. And I believe that sharing what I know and sharing what other people know makes for a better life experience, no matter what we're talking about. This commitment and connection to old Porsche cars has given me a freedom that some people may not understand because they don't desire it. But I need to spread my wings once in a while. I need to express myself in a certain way. And that way is generally done in a machine or on a machine. This is a byproduct. What I do for a living is a byproduct of my desire to build and create and to share. When I drive my 912 on a road I'm familiar with, it's this immense disconnect with the rest of the world as a whole. I'm just connected to the car's connected to the road, and I feel everything. When I'm on a hairpin, throttle on, the front wheels are twitching and breaking loose. Some patches in the road surface. I feel all that, and I'm fighting it, and I'm looking up ahead, and I'm looking into where I'm turning, because I want to be there, so I'm concentrating on that. You have to be on point. If you lift, you're going to lose control. Could be nothing, could be a lot. I let that feeling pour into the things that are important to me. So when I'm focused on driving, I'm focused on driving. Doing an activity with the family, I'm totally committed to that. And when I'm here at the shop, and when I'm working, and I'm interacting, I'm really committed to that. One of the greatest feelings is when somebody sees their car for the first time, a running, driving recreation of their dream. There's some days that are so rewarding for everybody in the building. We've done it, we've built this beautiful thing, and you can see it. And when everybody's firing, it's this machine that's unstoppable.